boys' motivation in modern foreign languages is a challenge facing many schools today. In the previous programme, we saw how Horbury School near Wakefield had tried splitting the sexes in years 8 and 9 in order to raise motivation and attainment. In this programme, we'll take a closer look at one of Jill Wheeler's French lessons, her Year 8 bottom set boys class. Commentating on today's lesson and examining Jill's techniques will be motivation experts Amanda Barton, head of the PGCE MFL course at the University of Manchester, and Terry Lamb, former president of the Association for Language Learning. After starting the single-sex programme, Jill developed a completely new strategy to motivate the boys.
We had the idea to set up a football league whereby in my particular Year 8 class last year I had low ability boys and I divided the group into 4 teams, les bleus, les rouges, les verts et les jaunes, and every time they did a good piece of work or they contributed to an activity or they showed team spirit and they reacted with respect towards one another, they score goals for their team. OK lads, tidy up your tables, the tidiest table gets a goal, you need sheets. These 2 teams have already won a goal because they were ready first. Well done, let's look at the goal. And we have an Excel spreadsheet on the whiteboard with a football league, and basically the teams move up and down the league at the end of every lesson. Les verts sont 7, les champions, première. And really, through that idea, we can now focus on quick 10-minute activities, that we keep changing activities to keep the boys focused on what they're doing, but we can have a 10-minute whiteboard activity followed by a 10-minute writing activity, then a 10-minute speaking activity, and each time the boys know that they're going to score goals at the end of that activity if they perform well. Are we all fighting fit and ready to score lots of goals today? Yeah? Good.
The fact that she starts the lesson off by kind of looking at what goals they've had so far gives a continuity between the lessons as well. And I think that linking between lessons is important.
In addition to outlining the objectives, gives them a carrot, doesn't it, really? You know, yes. that motivates them. And you can see on the tape how they respond. The team sees that they're the champions so far, and you can see that, you know, they're really pleased to be winning.
Right, so let's have a look at the objective for today. We are learning to. WALT stands for We Are Learning To, which is the main objective for the lesson, and then we have WILF, which is what I'm looking for. So by the end of today's lesson, I want you to try and name me as a team 5 things that you do in your spare time.
It's very important for learners to know what it is that they're doing. I think it's also important to know why and to try and think about why they might want to do that. So that may be something which could be developed from that. I wonder if the boys actually know why they're going to be talking about their free time. So I think some kind of contextualisation of that. When might you want to talk about your free time? What might you do with that? Why is that itself important? Why are we doing this topic? They need to link this with real people, I think. It's very important for them to think about when they might be doing this in French.
The first team to fill in what those 20 words mean is going to score today's first goal, OK? The vocabulary challenge at the start provides a focus and settles the boys down. Making it into a race is far more encouraging for them than just giving them a list of vocabulary and going through it in class together in a more traditional way. This team's doing well, les verts. You don't score a goal till everybody on your team has got the sheet completed, so help each other.
Racing, I know what it is. What is it?
Yeah, I can imagine that this sort of investigative style learning, that is a very hands-on approach, would really appeal to boys.
Cards.
Oh, yeah. OK, I'm not sure about number 20, lads. Just have another look at number 20 for me.
What is key to motivation with all children is to engage their brains. These boys are having to think about the language right at the beginning.
You can actually see them working together. And I think that is something that is so rarely observed in boys' classes.
OK, the Reds are finished. For 2 goals, who's going to come second?
And because they have that incentive that the first team to complete the list, wins this game. I mean, they do that quite willingly. They do spread the task between them.
You look for velo, I look for you look for lever or something. No, steady. Football, steady. Just look for it.
Oh, I think it's a tie.
Finish.
Fini.
We finished first. We did it first. No, you didn't. Yeah, we did.
Debut and boo.
Children do very often respond very well to the idea of competition. But the danger is that it can be individual against individual. And I think by setting it up as teams, then they really are going to be rewarding and looking at collaboration.
It's time for the class to move on to some grammar.
In the circle for a goal. What's a verb? Charlie. A doing word. Good lad. Excellent. These are all the phrases that we need to be able to say what you do in your spare time. Je joue au football. What must je joue mean? Cheyenne. No, I do. I play football. Good lad. So in the je joue circle, can everybody write I play in the bottom of your sheet? Right, lads. This time you're doing that secretly now in your teams by whispering.
There's a really clever bit of psychology going on here, isn't there? Because she's actually making it part of the game that they're going to whisper, which of course cuts down on the noise.
The fact that she has chosen not to present these phrases as whole phrases, but that she has chosen to present the nouns first of all, followed by the verbs, I think, is in itself really commendable.
Next one. Je parle au téléphone.
What I think she's allowing the pupils to do by presenting language in this way is that she's enabling them to manipulate language. So because they've learned the verbs separately from the nouns, they will in the future, one hopes, be able to apply the verbs, say, to the nouns. And really, that's part of becoming an independent language learner.
The lesson moves on to a new activity in which the boys race to translate the phrases on their whiteboards.
Okay, the first team with everybody to write down how to say I watch television, rather than just having now write some sentences about these activities in your exercise book. It keeps them obviously more interested and more motivated to join in, knowing that they're going to win goals for their team.
Ordinateur.
Ordinateur, très bien. Un but pour les verts.
These whiteboards are fantastic. I mean, it is like going back to the days of the slate, but they work brilliantly. And I think perhaps particularly with boys, because writing is sometimes seen as a private activity, and therefore boys feel uncomfortable with that. When you make writing more public, somehow writing is seen as less intimidating.
Les verts, Liam?
La ville.
Ville, well done, très bien. Help your team, it's a team game. Everybody needs to do it.
What for me is really nice about this is being able to see peer pressure operating positively. Because very often, we see peer pressure being exercised by boys on their mates. And it's a very destructive peer pressure. It persuades boys not to contribute to lessons because that's not the cool thing to do. Whereas here we've got quite the opposite situation. And peer pressure is being applied in order to get boys learning and contributing to the lesson.
No, you're playing. Oh, what? What are you doing? I swim for.
Come on, Blues, Jack, come on. Les Bleus.
Yes.
Next, Jill introduces a board game to allow the class to engage in some independent learning.
If you can say the activity, that's 1 point. Le tennis would be 1 point. But if you can say the activity with a verb, that would score you 2 points. The reason that I chose to do the board game was to encourage them to speak French, because I find that that's one of the things that is really difficult, is to get the boys to actually put the phrases together for themselves and say something. But in that activity, every single boy in the class was involved. Every boy wanted to put a verb in to get an extra point, not just have the activity on its own. And so therefore it's encouraging them to think about what they've learned and apply it, but in a fun way.
Je joue la tennis.
This is a really good example of how to differentiate, isn't it? You get 1 point if you just say the noun, you get 2 points if you add the verb.
So I'm hoping that you can do it without the sheet. As a team, you decide, everybody gets one go with the sheet or two goes with the sheet and then you turn it away.
She's not afraid, is she, to use peer assessment here. I think it's something which is very challenging for teachers because they worry that the pupils won't be able to assess one another. And I think she's grasped that nettle really and gone for it. And I think that that will pay off in terms of motivation.
I imagine that lots of teachers watching that would say, oh my goodness, you know, that's not accurate French, that's, you know, quite poor pronunciation.
That's another two, so that's 4 for Charlie. All right, now.
And it's a question of whether you want perfect pronunciation or whether you want your pupils to be speaking French. And I would imagine that essentially it's the latter, particularly if we're thinking about motivating pupils to carry on with languages.
Now let's see if we can remember what Wilf said at the start. Can you tell me 5 things that you do in your spare time? Now, as a team, just talk it through and see if you can come up with 5 phrases without looking. So let's just check if you can. And then when you think your team can do it, you can put your hands up. It takes the pressure off them by having them do it as a team. They wanted to join in and do it properly to win goals for their team.
Miss, can we do 2 weeks?
It's up to you, David.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yes.
Children want choices. They want to feel that they're able to make choices. They're going to be allowed to feed this back in any way they want. And they're planning that, they're talking about that. That's engaged them.
Right. OK, we'll start with the red team.
Je vais au cinéma.
Très bien.
J'écoute de la musique.
Très bien.
Every boy in that class has achieved success, hasn't he? I mean, and is aware of it and has performed it. He's proved it. He's not just been told that it was good. And that's very important for motivation, that there's something tangible that they set out to do at the beginning, that at the end they can prove that they can do.
Very good. That's Debussy. Give yourselves a big round of applause, lads. You did brilliantly. Absolutely fantastic. OK, let's have a look then how we are for goals then. Les Bleus. 14. Très bien.
What she's clearly done in this lesson is introduce a whole range of varied activities. I've lost count of how many different activities she's done with this class.
And she's also within each lesson incorporating lots of quick fire activities, so really to get the pace going.
Now, teachers can very often be a bit nervous about that because they think that it's very time consuming to prepare. I don't actually agree, because I think that if you've got that structure where you've got, say, 5 or 6 points in the lesson, changes in the lesson, that it's quite easy to think about the activities within those different sections of the lesson and to plan them. I think what is much more difficult is to try and plan how you're going to sustain a whole class's attention for 20 minutes. That, I think, does need an awful lot of planning.
The Blues have closed the gap in today's lesson by 1. Well done. That was an excellent lesson. I think the majority of the class have learned something from the lesson. I think it's going to need a lot of reinforcement now in future lessons, so it's important that we revisit that now in a different way and present it to them again, because the key for me is that they know those verbs and that they can use them. So they won't remember everything that they've seen today, but I feel that I've stretched them quite far. They've done far more vocabulary than they may have done in a traditional bottom set. Au revoir. Au revoir.